One of the worst ways I sabotaged my first breastfeeding experience without fully knowing it was by being obsessed with losing weight postpartum. But this is probably not exactly the story that you're expecting to hear, and I haven't scripted this at all, so here we go. I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was 15. And although I was able with acupuncture, herbs, essential oils, all these things I didn't use essential oils at that point yet. With herbs and acupuncture, I was able to restore a much more normal cycle, and I reduced a lot of the symptoms I had from my PCOS. When I got pregnant, I was very sick, and in all of my pregnancies that brought home babies, I had very severe morning sickness. So in my first pregnancy, I lost 20 pounds in my first trimester. And I tried very hard to eat, and I tried everything that I knew of in 2011 and then subsequently with each pregnancy to reduce that. But I still, no matter what I did, I would still throw up, and it was extremely unpleasant. And the worst part was, like, I was trying so hard to eat healthy, but I couldn't keep anything down, and everyone was so happy for me and the weight I was losing, and people would comment all the time, and I was like, wow, this like really, really sucks, because I don't think I'm supposed to be losing weight. My midwife and my doctor were monitoring me, and they were comfortable with where things were, because we couldn't really get the nausea to go away and the sickness to go away. And so I was probably in the middle of my second trimester when I started gaining weight. And then I ended up gaining, I believe it was 15 pounds above my pre-pregnancy weight. So I think I gained 28 pounds from my lowest point to the end of my pregnancy. And when I had my baby, I lost like 15 pounds like immediately, because I'm a weirdo and I weighed myself on the scale. And I thought I looked pretty good, and I was like, wow, maybe like things are turning around for me, and I'm not going to continue to struggle with my weight. So I was breastfeeding. I'm not going to go into the whole story. I have an episode of it on the podcast, and I'll put that when I make the notes. So if you want to check out that episode, you can listen to my whole breastfeeding story. But I was pumping around the clock and doing triple feeds. So I was nursing, supplementing, pumping every 3 hours. And as she got older, that spaced out. She slept through the night longer and longer period. Not slept through the night, but the longer she slept, then the longer I would allow myself to go, which also was a form of self-sabotage. But it was also a conscious decision that I made. When she was 3 months old, I tried domperidone, which my doctor prescribed to me from a compounding pharmacy. She did not want me on Reglan because of my history of depression, and I'm so grateful for her wisdom in that. And domperidone did make a difference in my milk supply, and it helped significantly. But I didn't realize that it was a gut emptying medication. And my husband's making me coffee, and he was asking me a question. Okay, so I was on domperidone. I did not know that it was a stomach emptying medication, so I didn't know how to time my eating with it. So the 15 pounds that I lost and had kept off for 3 months, I gained at 3 months postpartum on this medication. And then I kept gaining like a little more weight, not like a ton, like 1 or 2 pounds as time progressed. And I was really sad about my breastfeeding experience. I was extremely traumatized by how I was doing everything that the lactation consultants, my midwife, everyone told me to do, and I still wasn't making enough milk. And now I'm feeling really uncomfortable in my body because I'm bigger than I've ever been in my entire life. I'm not pregnant, and some people are making comments, and my pregnancy clothes were like starting to feel tight. And so it was really hard. Like, it was a very, very hard time for my self-esteem. My periods had gotten wonky again. Now postpartum, I had like a very early period, and then I didn't have one for 3 months, and then I had 2, and then I had a really long one. But before I got to that really long one, I was like, I have to change something. And, you know, I was doing like yoga and I was walking because like we walked everywhere. I walked to work. We walked for transportation. We didn't have a car. So it was not that I was inactive, but whatever was going on with my metabolism and then adding that domperidone on top of it without realizing, really just had me in this weight gain cycle. And I felt really bad about myself. I felt really ugly. I also had some kind of hormonal like acne that popped up around my eyes. And so I like had gotten rid of all of my makeup and was trying all of these things. I felt very, very bad about the way that I looked, except my purple hair was awesome. So thank you to my stylist for bringing me through in that way. And so I decided to try this diet that my friend was on. It was like a diet and exercise program. I won't say its name. But if you want to, you know, talk about anything like that, this is not a good idea to do at this stage. Even though I was resigned that I would not be able to exclusively breastfeed, I was still breastfeeding. And I knew that restricting my diet could impact my milk supply, but I felt so bad about myself. And I like needed something positive to be happening for me. Probably I should have just gotten therapy instead of trying a diet. And I should have actually processed through my grief, but I was just like winging it and doing it on my own, as unfortunately most of us moms do. And so I did this like very intense diet and exercise program. And of course I couldn't sustain it. And my milk supply dried up like that. And my hormones crashed. I went from making a third of what my daughter needed to not being able to pump like even half of an ounce in a couple of weeks. And it wasn't even like a crazy restriction diet. Like it wasn't like 1,200 calories or something like that. I think maybe it was between 1,500 and 1,800. And then I had this very long and weird period, like kind of like I did when I first got diagnosed with PCOS. So all of that to say, that is like the biggest way in which I sabotage myself, because I was doing the triple feeds. I was protecting my milk supply while I was supplementing her because she had to gain weight. Babies have to gain weight. And when a mom's body doesn't make enough, you have to bring something else in. And in a lot of ways, that was very hard for my mental health as well, because I was exhausted. I didn't feel like I could enjoy her as much as I should have because I was so obsessed with making milk. And you know, some people for this, it makes them be like, forget it. Formula is my thing. I don't need to do that. And good for you. And I'm not like projecting any of my stuff onto you. You can come to whatever conclusion that you want to. But because I needed some type of win, I was like willing to do that. But what happened was when my supply dried up, she stopped feeding like next day. So I'd been on the diet for like almost 3 weeks, nursing as normal. I was still pumping. She was still getting, you know, formula and donor milk. And then like the next day she just stopped nursing and she never nursed again. And I was crushed. And I had this horrible hormone crash where I was like super sad a lot. And like, we already know that my hormones were weird because my period was super weird. And I ended up getting help for that later on. That's not what this video is about. It's really about the fact that the way that we look and we feel we should look, and maybe society wants us to look, to different degrees with different people, like that affects us in different ways. And yes, there are a lot of women for whom they breastfeed and they lose weight. Like they make enough milk and that deficit of effort from the body results in weight loss, and that's great for them. But that is not everyone. There are a lot of women like me who have some kind of hormone dysfunction, and maybe their metabolism works better in pregnancy, but it doesn't work so well postpartum. But my point is that calorie restriction is almost always going to negatively impact your milk supply, and you get to decide whatever you want to do. I decided what I wanted to. I knew there was a risk, but I didn't really understand how big the risk is. So I just felt like sharing my story off the cuff. I hope that's helpful. If you want more information, hit me up. I got my free masterclass you can check out too, The Working Mom's Guide to Breastfeeding. I wish you the best. Peace, joy, and love on your new mama journey.